Hello and welcome in, everybody, to this Wednesday edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at AndyHermanNFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Thanks so much for taking some time to join me today. I did finish up my defensive grades just actually about 10 minutes ago as I'm recording this. Wanted to go over some of my thoughts, of course, my highest graded players, my lowest graded players, but let's kind of go over some of the news and notes from Tuesday, first and foremost, because there were a few different moves and I guess injury updates and things like that. So let's start there. First of all, Billy Wynn did not tear his triceps, which is good news because anytime you hear biceps, triceps, usually it kind of leans in the, he tore it direction. And usually that can be a significant injury. That is not the case for Billy Wynn, which is great news. They are going to place him on IR, which is going to move him, at least out for 3 weeks. My guess is it's probably going to be a little bit more than that. But I think the hope has got to be at this point that he's able to make it back in time for the playoffs. Maybe get that first round bye, and that would help things out a little bit there. Tyler Irvin also going to be out for at least probably about a month, was reported by NFL Network today. So he will also likely go on IR, which will open up another roster spot. And really, Tavon Austin signing could not have come at more of a perfect time to potentially fill that Tyler Irvin role. We'll see if Tavon Austin gets the call at kick returner, punt returner, and maybe some of those gadget slot type of plays. He's certainly more than capable of playing that type of role. So we'll see how aggressive that the Packers are in getting him in the offense and involved in it. Matt LaFleur is not hesitant to put somebody in a role relatively quickly. We saw it with Tyler Irvin last season. It, really picked up at a very similar time. And we've even like Dominique Daphne, who got called up this week from the practice squad. He plays, I think, 6 snaps on offense this week. So he's not afraid to put, players in there who maybe, haven't had a ton of reps with the ones and so on and so forth. So great timing for that Tavon Austin pickup. Hopefully Tyler Irvin's able to come back in time for the playoffs as well, but that will certainly be one worth monitoring. Couple other notes. Henry Black was added to the active roster. It seems like that was a worthwhile addition to the team. I was a little bit surprised actually after he played well in a couple games and there was actually some tape out there of him that maybe another bottom feeding team like the Bengals or the Jaguars or something like that didn't just take a shot at him because he looks like he has some potential. And I'm excited to see him be on the active roster for the remainder of the season. Most likely it's going to be in a special teams role. I believe he's been active for 4 different games so far, 2 as practice squad call-ups and then 2 as COVID replacements. But this will give him an opportunity to be in there week in and week out. And I think Henry Black actually has some ability to maybe help that special teams, especially from a coverage unit standpoint, a little bit. That'll remain to be seen. I'm not going to go out of my way to praise, Henry Black as the second coming of Jeff Janis as a special teams player. Nobody would be dumb enough to do that. But I do think he has the ability to be a core special teams player and somebody who can help this team. And I think it was a smart move to move him up to the active roster before maybe somebody did poach him and, bring him on at the end of the season for a few weeks to see what he could do. Packers also signed Anthony Fabiano to the practice squad. He will be a practice squad center. I would love to tell you that I know more about Anthony Fabiano, but I'll be transparent. I do not. If he gets called up to the active roster, I promise I'll do a little bit more game tape and study on Anthony Fabiano. For now, he's probably the 16th guy on a 16-man practice squad. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that. And then Isaac Noada is another player who is rumored to be added to the practice squad. I believe Matt Schneiderman reported that, and he was actually just on the Detroit Lions active roster, more of a blocking tight end, playing more of that Mercedes Lewis type role. Physical player, not a great athletic tester by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly could play a role if they ever needed him in that capacity. If, heaven forbid, Mercedes Lewis would ever have some sort of injury. They didn't up until this point have any sort of real blocking tight end on the roster. It's weird to think of Mercedes Lewis as kind of a linchpin player that you don't want to lose because, it's not like he's scoring a ton of points or doing a ton of stuff like that, but he is such a huge player as a blocker. In fact, when he went out, they used Rick Wagner in that role as basically a 6th offensive lineman, and it just goes to show how much they value him as a blocker on the team. So this maybe gives him a little bit more depth at that specific position should something happen to a player like Mercedes Lewis. No word yet on Raven Green. I'm a little bit worried on that one. I thought he's just coming off a really nice game this past week, so hopefully we get good news on Raven Green. I actually think of all the injured players, he's probably the one I would want back the most. No disrespect to anyone else, but we'll see what happens there, and hopefully we get good news on Raven Green. One other note before I get to my grades, no fans at home games for the remainder of the regular season. There was some, kind of rumors out there that maybe by the end of the regular season that Green Bay would be open to having more fans in the stands. That is not the case. It will just be the fans that have basically been there the last couple, home games, which has included, staff members of the Packers and their immediate family members. So that will continue for the remainder of the regular season, at least as of now. That's what the Packers have announced. All right, let's kind of go over my top 3 and bottom 3 graded players from this week. Number 1 on my list, Jair Alexander. I thought he had a fantastic game this week. Allowed a couple completions, nothing egregious. And I think that's the thing is, like, even when he allows completions, it's just like, intermediate pickups at best, and they're immediately tackled. He had that great play in the run game where he came up and made a tackle and flipped the guy's foot in the air and, forced him to go to the ground. He had a couple key pass breakups within the game, and just they used him on an island a ton. So basically just one-on-one on the outside. And the thing that really stood out in this game, you saw Jair Alexander on this game on Alshon Jeffrey, a bigger, more physical receiver. You saw him on Greg Ward, Jalen Reagor. You saw him on Dallas Goedert. Like, it didn't matter if it was like a 6'6", 6'7" tight end or like a 5'10" wide receiver, or 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", wherever Jalen Reagor is in that range, but more of the quick, speedy, shifty guy. Jair didn't have any issues with covering any of them, and whether it was a physical receiver, a speed receiver, and deep receiver, intermediate receiver, it just did not matter. Jair locked everyone down pretty much that was on his side through the entire course of the day, and just thought it was a really impressive game. You could tell he had a little bit of swagger within that game, which you love to see. Didn't have like a great few weeks prior to that, more average, especially by Jair Alexander standards, but thought he really had a nice game against the Eagles. Number 2 on my list, Zadaria Smith. Love seeing Z back on this list. Thought he had a really nice game. It's interesting. PFF, I don't believe, had him rated high in this game. I really like what he did. We didn't see a ton of big splash plays from Z. There were a handful of plays where he had pressures and the quarterback just got the ball out of their hands quickly. Would have been, potentially bigger plays had the quarterback had, just held onto the ball like a half a second longer. And then I also thought he did a really good job of helping his teammates make plays, whether it was, on some of the like twists and stunts, kind of taking on 2 men, whether it was kind of collapsing the pocket so somebody else, so the quarterback had to, escape and then somebody else made the play. I just thought he wasn't maybe the star of the defense, but he was a hell of a complimentary player and also made a couple plays in his own right as well. I thought this was a really, really nice game from Zadaria Smith, and a really, maybe his most consistent game of the year. We've seen him make bigger plays, no questions about that, but I thought this might have been his most consistent game, just from beginning to end of the game, of the entirety of the season so far. And then number 3, maybe an interesting player on this list, Christian Kirksey. And I know he missed a tackle in the game. Your mileage may vary a little bit on his pass breakup, where it looked like maybe there could have been a pass interference. I actually thought he did a pretty good job on that play. Just overall, I thought he was better in coverage. There was a play over the middle, actually a couple plays where receivers came over the middle on crossers, and he just decked them and basically like laid them out. Just love that sort of physicality. Did miss a couple of plays in the hole that I would love to see him make. He's not a sideline to sideline guy. He's normally not going to be great in coverage. So in those one-on-one situations in the hole, you would really love to see him just make those plays. But I thought this was a nice game from Christian Kirksey, and these are the type of games that you can live with Christian Kirksey in the middle of your defense. It's not going to be flashy, it's not going to be sexy, but he did a lot of really nice things. It was more of a sound overall game, but I liked what he did both in coverage and in the run game. Took on blocks on multiple occasions, and I just thought, again, it was a really nice game from Christian Kirksey, a player that maybe not a lot of people were expecting to be on the top 3 in this game. Bottom 3 on my list. My lowest graded player was Chandan Sullivan. And if for those of you who followed me for a while, I love Chandan Sullivan. I think he's a really nice player. right now it just doesn't seem like he has the same confidence that he had last year and even earlier this year in training camp. He had a strong training camp. I mean, I watched him quite a bit in practice, and he was just confident, flying around to the football. I haven't seen that same Chandan Sullivan the last handful of weeks. Has put together some back-to-back bad grades, and you just see him get beat on in-breaking routes quite a bit. There was a stretch, the beginning of this game he struggled, and there was a stretch in like the middle of the game where he played some really good football and then kind of got away from it at the end of the game again. I thought if Hurts and Wentz were able to keep their eyes downfield a little bit more, Sullivan was a player who could have been picked on much more than he was in this game. I believe actually PFF had a really bad grade on him as well, but he was my lowest graded player in this game. Hopefully he can bounce back and start playing with that confidence again sometime in the near future. Number 2 lowest graded player, Kenny Clark. And this is one that's starting to get slightly concerning. He's still graded in the positive for the year. He's at a plus 1.55 for the year, which I'm not going to get into the minutia of the grading system here, but plus 1.55 for the year. Just to kind of give you an idea, in 2017, plus 10.95. In 2018, plus 13.1. In 2019, plus 11.7. Back-to-back-to-back seasons of double digits in the positives. Just really great, consistent football from Kenny Clark for 3 straight seasons. This is the first year we haven't seen that. I don't know if it's injury related. I don't know if, I don't know what it is, but there are just plays where I've been watching. I'm just like, man, that is not Kenny Clark. Just a couple one-on-one plays where it's just kind of like one step up on the guy and then there's nothing doing. Like, Clark is a worker, man. He grinds and he battles and he gets to the quarterback. He does not get moved in the running game. Just a little bit of some uncharacteristic play from Kenny Clark so far this season. And again, I want to emphasize it's not bad on the season. He's still graded in the positive for the season, but nowhere near the general level of impact that you normally see from Kenny Clark, at least over the course of the last 3 seasons. And then finally, the third lowest on my list, and this one might be a little surprising as well, Darnell Savage was the third lowest rated player. He actually would have been my second lowest rated player and pretty close to Chandan Sullivan in this game had it not been for the interception at the end, which don't take away from him. It was a great play. But I thought he had a couple different plays. Matt LaFleur mentioned in his press conference where you can see him at times playing a little bit too aggressive, and I thought that was the case in this game. Just kind of keeping his eyes on the quarterback and not always what's been going on around him. So I think just that situational and just kind of spatial awareness at times is something that I thought he could have worked on a little bit in this game. I love the fact that he's playing more aggressive and he's playing with confidence. It's helped him really get 3 interceptions over the course of the last 2 weeks, and it's tough to argue with those type of results. But it also had the ability to end up in some big plays. Had again Wentz or Hurts had noticed it a little bit more, and potentially some bigger completions as well. So I think it's just something where he has to just calm down and trust everyone around him and trust the game plan a little bit more. Again, you want to see him playing with aggressiveness, but it has to be like, targeted aggressiveness, right place, right time, those sort of things. And I thought he just got out of himself a little bit in this last game. I love that he's trying to make plays, and I would much rather have people make mistakes going at 110 miles per hour than, just going through the motions or something like that. So, give me this Darnell Savage over like Clinton Dix from 3 years ago where it was just kind of jogging and whatever. I'm not going to get into it now, but I can live with this Darnell Savage, but I thought there were some plays that he left on the field that he could have handled much, much better. I think he'll certainly learn from it. Again, I want to say this as well. I love where Darnell Savage is heading in his career. I think he's going to be a big-time player for the Packers, but just has to clean up a couple things. Certainly was not a really poor grade by any stretch, but would have been much worse had it not been for that last interception. That's going to do it for me. Make sure to check back tomorrow here on YouTube. Make sure to check out Dusty, Steve, and Sarah on our podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for listening. I'll see you tomorrow. Go Pack Go.